Hi there, I'm Nancy Nash with Starfish Strength, and just like you, I have chocolate cravings. Today, I want to share with you the way that I have found to make chocolate pudding just a little bit healthier. For this recipe, I'm going to be using two 1.3 ounce packages of the Jell-O Cook and Serve chocolate pudding, unsweetened cocoa powder, and Fairlife fat-free high protein milk to boost the nutrition a little bit. So for equipment, I'm going to use a long-handled whisk just because there is some heat that comes off of this and I want to make sure I don't get burned. And I want a saucepan big enough to hold 4 cups of fluid. And even though I have a small household, we do make 2 of these at a time because technically this makes 3.5 servings. So we'll have 7 servings, plenty for chocolate cravings later on. So for the most part, I'm gonna be following the directions on the pudding package. So because we're doubling this recipe with 2 packages, we're gonna want 4 cups of milk. So I'm gonna pour my 4 cups of milk in, turn my burner on to medium high, medium high, depending on your stove. You definitely don't want the milk to burn or curdle. And then while the milk is still cold, I'm gonna add in my pudding, both packages. I usually give them a little shake just to move the pudding down so that when I open it, I'm not just inhaling it. I don't think I knew that trick when I was a kid. And then I'm gonna add 2.5 tablespoons of unsweetened cocoa powder to make this extra chocolatey. If you're a fan of dark chocolate or deep chocolate flavors, this really does give it that extra level of chocolatiness. And then just as the directions say, I'm going to stir this slowly and constantly. I'm gonna be honest, I did not make cook and serve pudding until I was an adult. We always did the instant stuff in my house growing up, and my husband told me that there was a flavor difference, and I definitely agree with him at this point. I was pretty excited to find out that Jell-O made a sugar-free version. I definitely think it's worth the extra time. Now this can start to stick to the bottom, so it really does help to have the long-handled whisk so that you can kind of scrape the bottom a little bit. You can also take a spatula kind of to the sides if you want, if you have a heat-safe spatula, or you might feel like you can do that with your whisk. If you're teaching your kids to cook, this might be a great way to introduce them to stove safety, definitely monitoring them, but giving them an opportunity to help you cook. I always thought it was really cool, even with the instant stuff, to see how quickly the pudding became thicker, kind of like a science experiment, right? Science projects in the kitchen. That's what made me want to cook as a kid. So after a few minutes, even though it's not boiling yet, you should feel like everything's dissolved. There's nothing really sticking to the bottom. If you find that there is something sticking to the bottom, just turn it down a little bit. You don't really want to get much below medium because we do still want it to boil. I'm no pudding expert, but I've made plenty of blunders making this, so I'm just sharing my knowledge with you. So after about 5 minutes of stirring, I am noticing that it's starting to thicken. This is the point where I've gone wrong. It is not done. You want to continue stirring for a few more minutes till it really thickens. Unless you like runny pudding, that's always an option. Now you can see it's beginning to stick to the whisk, so it's really thickening up. I think we've got maybe 1 more minute to go. And then when it really seems to be coating it, and you see those little bubbles forming, that's when I would shut off the heat. So as soon as you decide it's done, make sure you take it right off and put it on a hot pad or hot plate so you stop that cooking process and you don't continue cooking it from just the heat on the burner. And then while it's still warm, I'm actually gonna portion it out in dishes in 7 portions so that when it cools, there'll be individual servings. So I'm gonna use a 1/3 cup measure to help me portion this out. It is not a third of a cup this comes out to. I would say it's like 1.5 of these. But I've just found this is a good way to pour it into individual ramekins. So you can see what you think. And then everything I'm gonna pour it into is heat safe. So you just wanna make sure that these are both heat safe because this is very, very hot. And then safe to put in the refrigerator later as well. So can deal with extreme hot and extreme cold. So mugs work really well. I've got a mug here, and then I've got a couple ceramic ramekins. And then depending on how into fairness everyone in your household is, you know, make sure that you make these as even as you can. And then in my house, the person that made the pudding got to lick the bowl, unless like if you're making something for somebody's birthday, maybe they get to do that. But I'm leaving the 7th serving in the pan, and then as it cools, I'm gonna lick it. Up to you how you want to handle that. Just being honest. We like pudding hot in our household as well as cold. If you're someone that likes that too, you could consider putting a topping on it. One of the things we like to do is kind of make like a Mexican hot chocolate and put a little bit of cinnamon and a little bit of cayenne. If you want a variation on chocolate, that's something you could consider. I also really like this when it's cold, mixed with plain yogurt and strawberries and chocolate protein cereal as like a healthier dessert treat. And you could also just dip your strawberry right in it if you wanted to. So again, some other options for you to consider to make this feel like a treat for yourself, a healthier treat. Thanks so much for checking out this video. I hope that left you with a new idea the next time you have a chocolate craving. Please feel free to check out the rest of my channel, including my other chocolate recipe that I'll link at the end. And please feel free to share this with someone you think might appreciate it. Thanks again. I'll see you next time. Turn the wrong way. They're only turned the right way for me. I forgot about that. So thank you. For this recipe, I'm gonna be using 2